As I mentioned previously, there are multiple ways to analyze Andrzej Żuławski's 1981 film Possession. Not one singular interpretation will answer every question one may ask, and multiple interpretations may lead to contradictions and paradoxes. This is the nature of analyzing this film. Ideas are abstract, and little is certain, especially when pertaining to the nature of spirituality and how it manifests throughout the film. This is Justin with Style as Substance. In this episode, I will explore Possession's treatment of spirituality and how it relates to the film's characters and atmosphere as a whole. Something to keep in mind is that Possession does not seem to take any clear stance on spirituality and divine intervention beyond the abstract and ambiguous existence of the supernatural. The characters within Possession collectively think within the mindset of relative morality. What is morally righteous differs from person to person. God may be good and important to one person, but not to all. What is more important than spirituality in itself for the characters is the independent pursuit to be spiritually content, whatever that may look like for the individual. It is when characters are at odds with themselves spiritually that they reach their breaking points. Heinrich tells Mark that the only thing to fear is God, whatever that may mean to him.
There is nothing to fear except God. Whatever that means to you.
From this, we can deduce that Heinrich urges Mark to get in touch with himself spiritually, whatever that may look like to him specifically. While he urges others to pursue their own sense of spirituality, Heinrich accepts others for their actions, which rationalizes his affair with Anna.
And this is what you mean by accepting Anna's ways?
Precisely.
According to Anna, nobody is objectively good or evil in this world, but reducing people to such black and white concepts helps individuals cope and rationalize with the situations at hand. Anna tells Mark that if he wants, she is the bad one.
No one is good or bad, but if you want, I'm the bad one.
To Mark, God is dead, but he does cling to traditional moral values as he expresses to Anna.
And how do you dispose of ideas like honesty and loyalty?
Eventually, however, he finds himself getting more in touch with his subjective sense of spirituality after gazing upon the divine, and then subsequently undergoing a spiritual transformation and becoming another person entirely. His sense of spirituality becomes fulfilled, but it looks different from others. This concept of relative morality and a relative God can be seen throughout the film, differing according to the character, and in the case of the creature, differing upon one's interpretation of what it is. The creature may represent a number of things, but the concept of relative morality makes room for a multitude of interpretations. The creature could easily be interpreted as a physical manifestation of the devil, the Antichrist, or even God. With relative morality, perhaps there is a relative God. One person's devil is another person's God. If good is a reflection of evil, as Anna mentions in the film, then the creature could represent both good and evil, both God and Lucifer. Multiple interpretations may lead to contradictory, but equally valid answers that are supported by the very text of the film. To the character's understanding, the creature is God. When they lay their eyes upon it, they undergo significant change, as they either enter a trance or become temporarily blinded. Their experience is both mesmerizing and terrifying, and is described as divine.
It isn't normal. It wasn't even human. It was
Divine? Perhaps you met God a moment ago and you didn't even realize it.
When Zimmerman first sees the creature, he exclaims God's name.
God.
Moments before his death, Zimmerman shouts, Emmanuel.
Emmanuel!
In Hebrew, the name Emmanuel means God with us, and traces back to the book of Isaiah and then the Gospel of Matthew. Continuing biblical connections, Heinrich is blinded by the sight of the divine in physical form, similar to Paul the Apostle in the book of Acts. Anna asks if Mark believes in God, before stating that God exists within her.
Do you believe in God? It's in me.
This moment has a lot to unpack. She could easily be referring to the creature as God, seeing that she has spent a significant amount of time with it. Though up to this point, she has generally been seen as completely self-destructive. As she gets closer to her husband on a physical and emotional level and persuades him to join her cause, she finds herself to be more content and comfortable. After having sex, Mark contemplates if it is faith that has brought them together once again.
Is this faith that helped us?
Now the creature could just as easily be interpreted as the devil as it can God. It appears to tempt others into committing evil acts. Anna murders the detective, his lover, and Margie. She attacks Heinrich as well, but he escapes, only to be killed off later by Mark. Each of the victims witness the creature firsthand, and are sacrificed as a result. While the creature does lead them to temptation, characters view it as if it is God. Nothing is clear, and what exactly the film frames as moral and immoral becomes muddled. While relative morality and a relative God play a role in the collective view of the creature, if I were to pinpoint a specific being that it represents, it may be neither the devil nor God, but rather the Antichrist. See, the creature seems to represent a distorted version of God, one who contorts Christian ideology. They see the creature as God, but this godlike figure only brings them trouble in the end. Similar to God appearing in human form through Jesus as according to Christianity, the creature also takes on a human form, once again twisting the idea of God's image. It takes on a new body, but unlike Jesus, this can be seen as a physical embodiment of evil. The creature gradually takes on the form of Mark, identical to him in appearance, aside from his green eyes. Green eyes are often attributed to envy being one of the 7 deadly sins. In human form, the creature still appears sneakingly sinful, as he instructs a woman to kill the film's central couple, before attempting to take up Mark's role as the patriarch of the family.
Take it. Shoot them.
He is first believed to be God by the characters, but soon shows himself to be a threat. The main couple put their faith into this creature, blindly following its will by killing others, only for them to be killed themselves. While Mark believes the creature to be divine at first, it is not until his last moments that he begins to think otherwise. Temptation led him astray. Speaking on behalf of the subject of temptation, Zimmerman voices his thoughts on the nature of evil.
Oh, yes. I see. Darkness is easeful. Temptation to let go promises so much comfort after the pain.
Another example of temptation is at the very end. Bob urges Helen not to open the door to let the creature in, but she is tempted to regardless.
Don't open!
But I want to.
The creature tempts. It makes promises of comfort following pain, but in the end, the tempter leads its followers into darkness and into what can be perceived as evil. Mark may eventually have faith in the creature as if it were God, but there are clues littered throughout that indicate its possible evil nature. Anna states that she has put her faith into it, and Mark notices her physical beauty has been altered, at least in his eyes.
You look uglier. You've hardened. For the first time, you look vulgar to me.
If we were to interpret this from a Christian perspective, we may conclude that her giving into sinful temptation has led to her loss of beauty. Yet this is not enough for Mark, as he is much more concerned with getting Anna back, even going so far as to accepting her ways, as Heinrich claims to. Until the ending, to Mark and Anna, the creature could easily be God, or a divine entity, something that represents faith, something that brings them closer, even if in reality, It is something much more sinister. The character of Helen complicates matters. She is Anna's green-eyed doppelganger, and could very well be the same kind of being as the creature, though in contrast, she exhibits virtuous characteristics. She is kind, peaceful, and compassionate, which further complicates interpretations of what the creature is on a spiritual level. Perhaps she serves as some sort of counterbalance to Mark's doppelganger. However, Helen does have something to say about the nature of evil and her place of origin.
I come from a place where evil seems easier to pinpoint because you can see it in the flesh.
This is an interesting statement coming from her. We can conclude that she comes from a place where evil is not materialized in physical human form, or in the flesh, as she puts it. This discussion also leads her to question Mark, and pities his outlook on freedom.
Because you never feel free, do you? It's so sad that for you freedom seems to mean evil. And what about lack of freedom?
That was extraordinary.
Once again, relative morality comes into play. Perhaps there is no clear and concrete answer as to what the doppelgangers are, and one's interpretation can easily venture down contradictory paths. However, this may be intentional, as the text itself is reflective of the concept of relative morality in differing perspectives. The character Heinrich projects an image of spiritual security. Upon his first meeting with Mark, he is extremely confident with who he is to Anna, despite the fact that she is married. He is the biggest advocate for the idea of relative morality in the film. He states that Mark must accept Anna for her ways, as he has.
The key being the infinitive, to accept.
Additionally, he argues that it is not anyone's right to oppose their will on others.
But I'd always accept Anna's ways, as I think no one has a right to impose his will on anyone.
As opposed to Mark, Heinrich is very much in touch with his own relative sense of spiritual fulfillment, allegedly loving the world and everyone within it. While Heinrich may want to appear to accept others, he is also driven by an extreme sense of selfish and narcissistic gain.
I'm the only one in your life who has rights in you, because I don't claim any.
He is willing to break up a family for his own sexual gain, and expects even those affected by it to love him and accept him regardless. Heinrich manipulates those around him and takes what he wants in order to find peace within himself.
I take what I want! And I'm at peace with myself.
Subscribing to relative morality is something Heinrich must do in order to rationalize his own actions and contextualize them as right. He does want others to get in touch with their soul, as he views himself to, and he wants others to find God in their own way, whatever that may mean to them. After Mark calls God a disease to him, Heinrich immediately recontextualized that statement to match his ideology.
That's why through the disease we can reach God.
However, for as spiritually content as Heinrich may seem to be, Anna challenges his image, stating that he is ultimately just the same as everybody else.
You are not different from anyone else. We are all the same, but in different words, with different bodies, different versions, like insects.
Though for Heinrich, his spiritual pursuit has to some extent been dependent on being with Anna, as he seems to see God within her. Mark finds a postcard from the Taj Mahal addressed to Anna from Heinrich. It reads as follows: "I've seen half of God's face here. The other half is you." For obvious reasons, Mark is both intimidated and disgusted by Heinrich. In efforts to lead Heinrich to the creature, Mark talks to Heinrich's mother on the phone and pretends to embrace her son's ideology.
Tell him that I love him too. I love everybody and everything. I accept everything. I've become wise and profound and good.
Heinrich, as in touch with his soul as he thinks he is, becomes overwhelmed by the sight of the creature.
If you had only seen what I saw!
Mark then challenges Heinrich's spiritual philosophy.
Now, you believe in God, don't you? Certainly, in that great, incomprehensible God whom you reach through fucking or dope.
It is here that Heinrich's notion of relative morality becomes tested, once again. Soon after this, Heinrich is killed off by Mark. Following Heinrich's death, the building is set on fire, and a woman on the streets shouts out about God's light avenging them.
God's like a bank teller, giving it out cheap and getting it back dirty.
While we are not given much context as to who this woman is or why she says this, it is very much in line with the spiritual subtext that has been carried out throughout the film. Heinrich's sinful ways led him to this point. His sense of morality and spirituality become tested, and he is left touched by the divine, and his body is then left burning in hellfire, so to speak. An interesting conversation between Mark and Heinrich's mother occurs on the phone. Feeling that her son is in trouble, she calls Mark inquiring about Heinrich's whereabouts.
You understand that it is very late and Heinrich hasn't called me yet.
This part is especially peculiar, as she already saw Heinrich's body.
And Heinrich was there. Nobody could identify him.
Yes?
I recognized his body, of course.
It is not his body that she is looking for, but rather his soul.
Did you, identify it for the police?
No, it was only Heinrich's body, but his soul was not there.
Mark asks if Heinrich's soul has parted from his body before, which his mother automatically dismisses.
Perhaps he and his soul had parted company before.
You don't know what you're talking about.
According to her, it was his soul that brought Anna and Heinrich together.
When Anna met him, she immediately worshipped his soul.
Mark ensures that he will find out what has happened to Heinrich's soul.
I'll find her, and I'll force her to tell me what she's done with Heinrich's soul.
The soul and what happens to it after death becomes a topic of discussion between Mark and Heinrich's mother. It is not until Mark visits her that she accepts that her son is dead.
Heinrich's dead, isn't he?
Yes.
She states that Mark is acting as an angel of death.
You come like the angel of death, the one who kills.
This is not the only time a character is referred to as an angel. Margie self-identifies as the angel of the extinct heart.
Oh, it's Aunt Margie, the angel of the extinct heart, limping to the rescue.
Heinrich's mother asks Mark if he has come to tell her that he does not know the location of her son's soul.
And you came to tell me that you don't know where Heinrich's soul is.
Yes.
Finally accepting her son's death, the grieving mother states that there is value in believing in the afterlife, even if there is none.
It would be good to think that the soul lives separately from the body, that the soul lives forever and the body only for a time.
She longs for the comfort that religion brings, especially when it pertains to coping with the deceased. As seen with her necklace and wall decor, the mother is, or at least up to this point was, likely Christian. This is her pursuit of spirituality, which is in contrast to her son's loose sense of religious affiliation with Buddhism. Naturally, this ties back to the idea of relative morality and relative spirituality. While Heinrich's past actions may be at odds with her religious morals, she ultimately sides with her son regardless, accepting his ways.
I have to be on my son's side, even if he's made you unhappy. I know all there is to know about him, but I love him.
She then raises a relative moral question, contextualizing the varying perspectives of the situation.
I was wondering which is worse. Take away someone's wife, hurt a child, or to kill.
The mother then takes her own life, so that her soul can be closer to Heinrich's. Unless, of course, the soul does not live on after death, in which case she takes her own life because she does not want to live without him.
I don't want to be here. If Heinrich is not around anymore.
Given the title of the film, it is fitting that possessions play a role in the story, though what kind of possession the title refers to is up for interpretation. Mark wishes to possess Anna. Anna wishes to possess the creature. If one is to view the creature as the devil, it may wish to possess both Mark and Anna. Much of Anna's irrational behavior and fits of rage can be attributed to her spirit being possessed. We see, though, that she is not in total control or approval of her behavior, and sometimes the evil within her takes control of her body. The subway scene may be one of the most obvious examples of possessions in the film, but Anna seems to be possessed throughout the majority of the narrative. However, the evil within her seems to come out more in some scenes than others. For example, on her way to visit the creature, Anna enters a trance and is unfazed by a fellow passenger stealing a banana from her grocery bag, showing signs of complete detachment from the world around her. This bag may also have spiritual significance, as I will discuss shortly. Once the creature is threatened by someone, Anna enters a violent trance and kills them off in order to protect her lover. Anna is not the only one to become possessed either. Both her and Mark seem to enter a trance of some sorts, following their violent fight in the subsequent road accident. Drunk and blinded by ambition, guilt, and denial, Mark becomes possessed in his own way as he copes with his marital separation.
Mom.
When he visits Heinrich for the first time, Mark appears possessed as well. He even acts upon violent impulses and attempts to choke his rival. Heinrich also seems to enter a trance of sorts once their roles reverse.
I'm sorry I used violence with you. Now I'd only employ my psychic forces to make it come to me.
Which possessions are meant to be viewed as spiritually influenced and which ones aren't becomes muddled, as it seems the supernatural in general looms over and influences the character's actions and relationships. Some are more difficult not to be taken literally, though, such as when Mark enters a trance upon visiting the building that houses the creature. An alternative interpretation of these possessions is spirit possession. By this I mean the wandering spirits or lost souls of the dead possess the bodies of the living, causing them harm.
In all cultures, we find descriptions and stories of spirit possessions, and most famously, the many references in the Bible of Jesus helping people by driving out unclean spirits. Death is a very simple transition from the physical world into this spiritual world. It's just like going from one room into another room or traveling from one country to another country. And when we die, we will continue living, but not in a physical body, but in a spiritual body. You see, we perceive our reality according to our beliefs. These souls with these strong beliefs are totally confused when they die, and we call them lost souls.
Heinrich's mother searches for her son's lost soul, remarking that it has left his body. Perhaps it still wanders on. Mark does not enter a trance until after viewing the corpses of the gay lovers. Perhaps in some abstract sense, the spiritual forces surrounding the dead enter Mark. This would make some sense if we are to accept the interpretation that Mark is gay. Possessing spirits are said to be attracted to hosts who share similarities.
This is in complete accordance with the law like attracts like.
This earthbound soul now lurches onto his guest and enters his aura and his body. He now has become a possessing soul, and from now on this lost soul will possess, influence, and control this human being via thoughts. This lost soul will now keep projecting thoughts and desires, and the human being is convinced that these are his own thoughts, but they are not. They are from the possessing soul.
Likewise, the two sisters Anna mentions may be lost souls as well, fighting each other while existing within her. Whether these examples of possessions are meant to be taken literally or not, they reflect and define the mindsets and emotions of the film's central couple. But there is an undeniable spiritual narrative that runs parallel with the couple's journey to restore their relationship. This spiritual influence is present throughout their relationship and perhaps acts as a guiding force. Whether said spiritual influence is the evils of demon possession or the touch of God. We'll come back to this. From baptism to holy water to a number of Christ miracles, water plays a significant role in Christian history and theology. In possession, water is used as a recurring motif, and it is used to complement the character's spiritual possessions and journeys. Heinrich projects an image of spiritual contentness, so it is fitting that he is the one who makes several verbal references to water. He compares himself to Mark, stating that while they come from different places, they ultimately are pursuing the same thing. He uses a mountain lake as his example.
Our situation is like a mountain lake we are trying to swim in, starting from different shores.
Later on, he returns to a similar analogy, this time referencing a stream, stating people should swim to the center rather than staying on shore.
We are made to swim in the center of the stream, not to wait on the dry banks.
This matches the idea of spiritual pursuit, as according to the film. We ought to swim forward to the center of this body of water we avoid, so that we can reach our subjective sense of spiritual contentness and morality, rather than passively standing on the shores, looking at the water, but not entering it. Anna states that she is snorkeling, meaning she is fully submerged in her spirit.
Absolutely no.
It's fitting that Heinrich gives Bob a sailboat too, so that he can leave the apathetic shores where his father remains. Mark expresses that he does not like the sailboat, largely because he does not want to be reminded of Heinrich, but also because of the symbolic value that it holds in relation to spiritual pursuit, considering that it crosses the waters.
I don't like Heinrich, and I don't like that sailboat.
However, he does not take away this toy from his son. He probably figures there is no use getting in the way of his son's spiritual journey, despite remaining at the dry banks himself at this point of the film. Bob is seen submerged in water during different parts of the film. He takes a liking to the bath. We first see him playing in the bathtub as his parents admire him. This happens once again, though this time Mark is accompanied by Helen rather than Anna.
Come on, cut it out, Bob.
Towards the end, Bob returns to the bath once again. He is fearful of letting the doppelganger into the house, perhaps fearing the devil. He takes to the bathtub, seemingly to drown himself in order to escape the supernatural threat. Bob is the innocent one in the story. He is affected and hurt by his parents' decisions, and the cruelty they inflict on each other ultimately affects him the most. If Mark's doppelganger is an evil force, Bob may take to the water to cleanse himself from the world's wickedness, completing his spiritual journey in a somewhat contorted parallel to baptism. Washing away evil is symbolically expressed through water. A prime example of this is when Helen washes the blade Anna used to cut herself. By doing the dishes, Helen washes away the harmful and sinful image of Anna. As Heinrich encourages Mark to accept life for how it is, water is heard dripping in the background. Later on, Mark washes his face in the sink and states that he can think more clearly now.
I can think more clearly now.
Through water, characters are cleansed and rejuvenated, and now they can think more clearly. Through water, characters get more in touch with their spirituality and get more in touch with God. Mark struggles with finding some sense of spirituality. This is in stark contrast with Heinrich, who appears spiritually content with himself, which naturally piles on more insecurities for Mark. Throughout the film, Mark expresses his disliking toward the idea of God. He tells Heinrich that to him, God is a disease.
For me, God is a disease.
This negative view of God is likely attributed to the state of Mark's marriage and the collapse of the family structure. However, there is an even greater narrative that contextualizes Mark's spiritual disposition, as inferred through different instances of dialogue. Mark lost his faith in God as a child when he witnessed his dog die. He first references the dog to Anna.
You know, I remember when I was a kid. Have you ever seen a dying dog? You know, one of those old dogs that comes to die under the porch of the house.
At this point of the relationship, he compares himself to his childhood dog. As he begs for Anna to stay, he states that he will yelp, much like his dog.
If I threw myself at your feet and yelped, would you still walk over me?
At the last moment, it yelps.
Reminding him of the loss of his childhood pet, Mark witnesses his marriage dying before his eyes, and as a result, he loses faith. Because of the misfortunes his life brings, Mark struggles to believe in God as a good being, instead viewing him as a disease. He later directly implies that he lost his faith in God through his experience with his dog's death, stating that as far as he is concerned, God remains with his dead dog.
You know, for me, God is still under the porch where the dog died.
As far as Mark sees it, God is either dead to him or has left his side during that point of his childhood. Toward the end of the film, Mark spots the body of a dog under the bridge. He is reminded once again of his childhood. Mark's supervisor foreshadows his self-inflicted demise as he compares the dog to him.
That dog didn't die of old age. What about you, Mark?
The supervisor urges Mark to broaden his horizon and focus on the world at large, rather than simply the dog.
We can take care of drowning dogs, but please help us take care of the drowning world. Don't you think it's uneconomical to waste yourself on dogs? Even dogs you love.
The supervisor encourages Mark to continue working for the company. By moving past the dog, the source of his spiritual disposition, Mark would theoretically embrace God. Though instead of doing so, Mark once again brings up the dog, focusing on the despair of the situation.
When I was a boy, I had a dog and his name was Louis. When he crawled onto the porch to die, I stayed there with him.
The supervisor seems to view this as something that should be irrelevant to Mark's adult life, as he should move past it and become a man.
So what?
I wanted to see what it was that made him crawl under there.
Nobody's a boy anymore. Must we prove it?
He is at odds with himself as a man, both socially and spiritually. Still, spirituality exists within his life, even towards the beginning of the film. When he searches for clues as to who his wife has been with, he turns to his bookshelf. His personal library includes books on psychology, philosophy, politics, and religion. The Holy Bible stands out on the shelf alongside other religious texts. It seems Mark takes a particular interest in Eastern religion and philosophy. He picks up Thomas Hoover's book, Zen Culture, as well as Mukherjee and Madhu Khanna's The World of Tantra. Here Mark is starting to undergo a spiritual transformation. Slowly but surely, he allows spirituality to enter his life. When he visits Heinrich's house, he also browses his books, perhaps comparing their libraries, thus comparing their spiritual contentment. Alternatively, the books may actually belong to Anna, who turned to Zen and other philosophical and religious books in order to find her spirituality, as encouraged by Heinrich during Mark's time away from home. Either way, Mark is now surrounded by spirituality, and this spirituality only grows from here. Once Mark sees the creature, he undergoes a complete transformation. From here, he gets more in touch with his spiritual side. The creature also starts looking more and more like Mark. Seeing how the staircase could symbolize the stairway up to heaven and down to hell, Mark could be leaving his old body behind in exchange for a new one that is more in tune with spirituality. This can be compared to the idea of reincarnation, as well as be compared to the concept of an eternal body, as according to the Bible. This transformation, however, could also be seen differently. Mark could be possessed by evil, enough that any good left in him is killed off completely, and as a result, he is unable to reach heaven. Though in the end, he does end up with Anna, who has undergone her own spiritual transformation. It is not uncommon for individuals to be unsure where they stand spiritually. This is why characters like Anna paint somewhat of a contradictory portrait of what their spiritual and moral outlook on life is. Anna may voice that she does not believe in good and evil in objective terms, but this may be an effort to rationalize her own wrongdoing. She does in fact recognize her actions as being wrong, stating she is the maker of her own evil.
I can't exist by myself because I'm afraid of myself, because I'm the maker of my own evil.
At another point, Anna voices her view on goodness, viewing it as a mere reflection of evil.
Goodness is only some kind of reflection upon evil. That's all it is.
Once Mark actually begins to hear her out, she opens up about how she views herself as immoral.
I messed everything up, even Bob. I felt shit, liar, completely alone, walled in. And you think I'm immoral? Shit, I think so too, but not the same reasons.
Here, Anna recognizes immorality as being relative, seeing how they both view her as immoral, just for different reasons. Rather than calling attention to her murderous ways, Anna seemingly views herself as immoral because of the indirect effects her behavior has on Bob, the fact that she lies, and the fact that she has no feelings for other people.
I felt nothing for no one!
Though by making this statement, she reveals remorse and guilt. The fact that she clearly feels terrible about not feeling for anyone indirectly hints that she may possess at least some level of feeling and care for others, enough to lead to such introspection anyway. Anna allows herself to give in to temptation, seeking sex and spirituality through her affairs, despite the very nature of an affair being considered immoral. Mark has distanced himself from spirituality, as well as from sex with Anna. This led her to Heinrich, although neither man was enough for her, so she instead turned to the creature. Seeing how the creature eventually takes on the appearance of Mark, it seems that Anna wishes to find both spirituality and sex with her husband, but he has failed to give this to her. The creature doesn't entirely meet her needs though, as Anna is thrown into fits of rage and hysteria at different points until Mark conforms to the creature's will as well. Whether she is right or wrong, in Anna's head, the creature may be the closest thing she has ever come to her realized spiritual self. So when Mark pushes Anna to end things with her lover, he is also asking her to cut out her spiritual outlook on life. It is also fitting that her response is repeatedly saying the name of Jesus.
Jesus! 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 Jesus!
Essentially, what Mark is asking of Anna is for her to choose between her family and her faith. Mark later watches Heinrich's videotapes that depict Anna reaching a breaking point, contemplating about morality as well as reality itself, by delivering rather cryptic messages. She acknowledges her wrongdoings, but states she views that as another version of her, as if it were a sister.
But I recognize the self who has just done something horrible, like a sister I've casually met in the street. Hello, sister.
She then goes on to speak about two sisters, Faith and Chance.
It's like those two sisters are Faith and Chance. It's like those two sisters are Faith and Chance.
She likely doesn't mean two literal sisters, though personification of these ideas may help her understand the gravity of the situation, the internal struggle dominating her spiritual self.
Well, it's like those two sisters are Faith and Chance. My faith can exclude Chance, but my Chance can explain faith.
Faith and Chance constantly wrestle with one another, causing chaos within her life and within her family unit. She wants to give her husband a chance, but she believes that her faith does not allow her to wait around for him.
My faith didn't allow me to wait for a chance, and Chance didn't give me enough faith.
As a result, however, she suffers, but that is part of life and a part of faith.
I suffer, I believe, I am.
It seems that Anna is trying to figure out her path in life with respect to Mark and with respect to faith. She feels that the two possibilities to choose in life are choosing faith and putting one's trust in God, or choosing chance and letting whatever happens happen. Though Anna clings to the hope of another possibility that transcends these ideas of choosing faith or choosing chance, she believes in this third possibility without grasping what exactly it is, comparing it to cancer or madness.
But at the same time, I know there's the third possibility, like cancer or madness, but cancer or madness contort reality.
One could argue she is descending into madness. She brings up cancer, which is a disease. Earlier, Mark and Heinrich discussed the nature of God in relation to diseases, with Mark stating that God is a disease, and Heinrich stating that through disease we reach God. Now, Anna wants to move away from the madness and disease that plague her spiritual journey, as she does not want to live a life of contorted reality. She instead wants to transcend all contortions and confront reality for what it is, and become in touch with her soul, though she doubts herself.
The possibility I'm talking about pierces reality. Well, I'm unable to say it. Maybe it's impossible to say. Maybe I'm too stupid.
If a third possibility exists, it is ultimately too sublime to comprehend and obtain. Thus, she must pursue faith or chance, or find a balance between them. However, the wrestling of the two sisters ultimately haunt and get the better of her. As she expresses later to Mark, agony manifests within her as she waits for either sister to finally die.
It's as if the two sisters were too exhausted to fight anymore. These women wrestling in an arena of mud, with their hands locked at each other's throats, each waiting to see who will die first. Both staring at me!
This scene cuts to Anna gazing at a statue of Jesus. The moment begins quiet, as Anna appears to be awestruck and mesmerized by the sight of God. She is moved as her soul becomes tested by her sense of Christian spirituality. She begins moaning as her internal demons are at odds with her faith. Her voice echoes as she cries out to God, hoping for him to hear her voice. The quiet, albeit aggressive nature of this scene expresses the fight between faith and chance, and the internal struggle of choosing between them. In the scene that follows, Anna descends into emotional turmoil as the fight between the two sisters reaches its climax. Possession is full of memorable moments. After all, this is a film where a woman has sex with an octopus-like monster as her husband watches. Yet it is the subway scene that leaves the biggest impact on many people. Isabella Adjani's performance turns into a unique and mesmerizing experience as we follow her descent into madness play out in real time. Seeing the likeness of Christ has pitted the two sisters against each other in a violent fight to the death. The moans expressed by Anna reflect the conflict growing inside her. Her soul does not rest, it is in agony. While she remains in the house of God, evil does not prevail. Once she leaves, however, the fight within her really takes off. We hear church bells and see a ray of sunshine. In Christian tradition, church bells are rung to praise God, but are also rung to cast out demons. This is, of course, fitting with the events that follow. The ray of sun prominently shining on the camera could very well be interpreted as God's light shining upon the world. There are two women in wheelchairs in front of the church, seemingly enjoying the nice day outside. Their disabilities may foreshadow the fact that Anna is about to lose something, or maybe have some parallel to the two sisters.
Like a sister I casually met in the street. Hello, sister.
One seems to pull out a book or piece of paper on the precise moment that the sun's ray shines down upon them. The other seems to have one too. Could it be a Bible? Maybe, or maybe not. It looks like it may be a script. Make of that what you will. Anna walks away from the church and away from the church bells, leaving God behind her. This peaceful scene is set in broad daylight and on land, but the film soon cuts to the underground subway. The scene may be subliminally juxtaposing something along the lines of the Earth's equivalents to heaven and hell. Anna is seen taking the escalator. The imagery of her ascending right as the scene cuts to a descension conveys her inner turmoil as she is pulled in opposite directions of heaven and hell. The screeches of the yellow transit serve as an antithesis to the church bells as the transport enters into darkness. Anna walks up the moving escalator, both showcasing her psychological detachment from her surroundings, as well as her hurriedness to reach God. With the combination of the overhead lights and the dark claustrophobic environment, Anna is surrounded by both light and dark, both good and evil. Once she reaches the top and begins entering the hallway, Anna is relieved and lets out a laugh. However, the evil within her begins contorting her movements and hyperbolizes her emotions. The laugh becomes a mockery of good from the evil within her, as Sister Chance begins taking over, strangling Sister Faith. This leads her to the hallway, or rather, hell on earth. The damp mopped floor is reflected by the dim overhead lights. Anna is pushed against the tiled wall, her will now weakened. Throughout this internal fight for spiritual dominance, Anna has been clutching onto a bag of food. To some degree, this bag of food may represent faith itself. She holds it and protects it, almost as if it were a baby. However, Anna's body is tossed back and forth as she struggles to gain control. Maniacal laughter echoes from her mouth, taunting and hurting her, yet she still clings to the bag of food. She still clings to her faith. As she is pushed against the wall once again, Anna screams. This is probably Anna here screaming, or maybe it is Sister Faith, while Sister Chance was the one laughing. Either way, the scream is in clear contrast to the laughter, terror versus sadistic pleasure. She is dragged across the room with the bag in hand, when suddenly Sister Faith is defeated. The bag of food is smashed against the wall. Milk and egg yolks splatter across the wall and soak her dress. Anna continues to scream as her faith is killed off. The first obvious cut in the sequence shows her become fully possessed, perhaps by Sister Chance. She screams and attempts to gain control, but her body is violently and ferociously taken over. Anna eventually collapses and begins to roll around in her aborted faith. A mixture of liquids ooze from her body as Sister Chance pushes out what remains of Sister Faith. Once the scene cuts to present day, Anna explains she miscarried Sister Faith.
What I miscarried there was Sister Faith.
She refers to this as a miscarriage of faith, providing further evidence of Faith being treated like a child.
It's to be protected.
Like a child.
Yes.
Among the foods of faith are milk and eggs, both of which can be associated with birth and childhood. This can also be read as a violent subversion of the story of the Virgin Mary. The miscarriage of faith can also be read as rape of sorts, as her body is taken advantage of, climaxing with the discharge of white liquid and bloodshed. The hopes for life are replaced with the pain of death, and chance won in this fight. Or did it? Her faith may have died, but despite this, she states she must take care of and protect it.
And what was left is Sister Chance. So I had to take care of my faith, to protect it.
So despite Faith leaving her body, Anna feels she can restore it, if she does what she can to protect it, removing all obstacles in her way.
Did Margie see it?
Yes.
That's why you killed her.
She tried to take it away from me.
Anna seeks the creature for spiritual fulfillment. She even gets another bag of food. However, Anna may be overcome by her own sinful delusions, turning to evil when she should be turning to good. Maybe her faith really was killed off for good, with its remains mixing in with the mop water on the ground of the subway tunnel. Possession may not be advocating for relative morality and relative spirituality at all. The film more so is just showing that people operate under their own guidelines of what is right and what is wrong, as they cling to their own perspectives filtered by biases and personal value systems. Possession also doesn't reject the concept of moral absolutes. It's just that people may not ever be able to accurately measure them. What is good, and what is evil. Just the two aren't always the most discernible. There may be no way to ensure proper judgment without first taking a leap of faith. Many facets of life, especially regarding religion and spirituality, do not have the clearest of answers, though there are ultimately many perspectives to take into account, as there are many ways to analyze the world, as well as the art within it. Though it is important to know that these varying perspectives may simultaneously support, recontextualize, and contradict one another, just like the varying readings of possession that I have presented in this video. The questions we ask may not always have clear answers, yet we should ask these questions anyway.